And this is it. It's a 1981 Honda RS250, quite a popular bike at the time. Now, as you can see, this one has been quite heavily modified by a previous owner. They've already turned it into a cafe racer style bike. Done some bits pretty well, unfortunately some bits not so good. Now, none of this is actually bolted down at the moment, but if I lift the seat unit off, you can see here the effects of not actually having a back mudguard. All the electrics have got coated in muck and very, very dirty. That's going to need to be sorted out. I'm going to have to make up a back mudguard of some sort to go on the bike. But one of the biggest issues I've got is that when this modification was done and the frame was resprayed, unfortunately they haven't used any primer. And as you can see here, even where tape's been on it, the paint's come off in big lumps. So really the frame needs to come back to bare metal, get re-primered and repainted. Same thing's happened with the tank. This is a pattern tank. It seems to be quite good quality, but again it's just had a coat of aerosol spray on it. Again, not a bad thing, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but there's no primer on it, and in fact there's no lacquer coating on it. You can see here where there's been a fuel spill and it's completely wrecked the paint. It's lifted the paint off. Starting here on the back end of the bike, which is where the most obvious change is, as you can see the back end of the frame has been cut off, and they have actually fitted a cafe racer style seat, which is actually quite nice. It's not a bad little unit, but where they cut the end of the frame off, they've actually fitted, I don't know if you can see it on this, a loop which has a series of LEDs inside it. Those LEDs work as your tail light and your brake light. Probably not the best thing ever. As you can see on a close-up, the rust has really got in there now, and I don't think the LEDs are going to go too much longer. In the interest of style, there's also no rear mudguard. Now, it does look quite cool, but this is England and it rains, and it's caused all sorts of havoc with water getting everywhere that it shouldn't be. Also, the number plate is mounted down low in the style you'd have with a chopper or a bobber. Personally, I don't particularly like that, but just a matter of style. The bike actually belongs to a mate of mine called Nate, who bought it pretty much as it is now and used it for about a year. When he first picked it up, the bike had been fitted with a cone style air filter, and it didn't seem to like it. He retrofitted an original air box, which you can see mounted there, and the bike actually ran much better with that, so that's going to stay. Unfortunately, of course, the previous guy has cut off all the brackets. As you can see here, there should be brackets holding this, and it's actually just on with cable ties at the moment, so that's going to need looking at and sorting out. The main reason the bike came off the road, and it's been off the road about 2 years now, is while it was in use, the actual seal behind the cover here, so where you've got the shaft coming out from the engine for your drive sprocket at the front, the seal behind that blew while the bike was in use, and it sprayed the whole of the back end of the bike with hot engine oil. Obviously it's written off the rear tyre completely, but basically that needs fixing before it can move a wheel again. So that's going to be one of the jobs to do. Now, if we move around to the other side of the bike, same sort of picture. Everything's pretty mucky. Everything's probably got a good old coating of oil and grease, and dirt has stuck to it. One of the bits that does concern me a little bit, if we have a look down here on the swinging arm, basically here where this nut is, that's a threaded section that should actually have a grease nipple on it. So the whole idea of that is that every now and again you can put some grease down into your swinging arm and keep the bearings nice and lubricated. Unfortunately, the nipple is missing completely, so what we've actually got is a hole down into the swinging arm bearings to let water in. So I suspect that's been happening for the last few years. That'll all have to come apart, and we'll see how things are looking there. On the look around, I've also noticed here, this mechanism here is actually the choke. There doesn't appear to be any way of operating the choke. The fact that my mate was using the bike for a year, it obviously fires up okay, but it would be a good idea to reinstate the choke. As we move around to the front, unfortunately we've got the usual leaking fork seals that you get on an older bike. I mean, this thing is, what, 41 years old now, so it's not surprising things are getting worn. But you can see it's actually, where it's gone in use, it's actually dripped all down the fork leg. So again, it'll be a full fork strip down and rebuild. The actual wheel itself's in quite nice nick. Luckily these are alloy rims, so you haven't got to worry about any rust on them. The forks are very, very spongy, but that could just be where it's had the leak. Maybe it's got old oil in, which is a little bit too thin. Might just need some thicker oil. A little bit tatty at the front as well. It's got an aftermarket LED headlight on. They're not my favourite things, but apparently it works quite well, so you know, that might stay. The usual mini speedo's been fitted. The actual mileage of the bike is a little bit of a mystery, to be honest. I've had a look online and it's only had one MOT in this country, so I'm assuming it's come in as a grey import. It's registering 2,888 miles. It had 3 miles on it at the MOT, but what it had before that, well, who knows. Okay, so with the little 250 Honda, basically I need to fix the oil seal that's gone coming out of the engine, make up a new back mudguard. It hasn't got one at all at the moment, so I'm going to make something up for that, because what's the fun in buying one? Close up the end of this open loop on the back of the frame, fit a proper back light, get the mudguard up here as well, fix the problem that's probably there on the swinging arm bearings. I'd be surprised if they've survived. Fix the choke that's under there, sort out the front forks, completely rebuild them with new seals and oil, completely strip the bike apart, get all the paint off that hasn't worked, repaint everything, put it all back together, hopefully make it look a lot more lovely, and well, then we can go for a ride. Before starting any of this, it needs to be cleaned within an inch of its life. I'd recommend doing that with anything you're going to work on, otherwise you're just fighting grease and muck every step of the way. I was mentioning earlier that the paint hadn't been done very well on this bike. Just to give you an idea, the jet wash has actually taken some of the paint off the swinging arm, so it wasn't going to stick on there very long. It's actually missing in all sorts of spots now, but hopefully that'll help me when it comes to taking them off.